listening to The Kula Ring, a podcast made for manufacturing marketers. Here are Carmen Perry and Jeff White.
Welcome to the Kula Ring, a podcast for manufacturing marketers brought to you by Kula Partners. My name is Jeff White, and joining me today is Carmen Perry. Carmen, how you doing, sir?
I am delighted to be here, and you?
I'm glad to be here as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's. I think. Look, any marketer. I mean, it's like you just end up rolling your eyes, right? When people say, "Oh, we have to do more with less." It's like, yeah. We haven't been listening to that for 25 years or something.
Yeah, water's wet.
Right. But it is nice to tell a story about people who are challenged, frankly, with trying to figure out how to do more with less and compete against much bigger competitors, much bigger players, and figure their way through it. Because I do think it is a challenge that a lot of marketers face, particularly early on in their career. I mean, not everybody's kind of first marketing gig is with Fortune 100, right?
For sure. And I mean, when you're saying early on in careers, you can also be talking about new companies as well that are just kind of getting started, like the case of our guest today.
Yeah. Let's get on with it.
So joining us today is Scott Vosburgh. Scott is the marketing director at Sierra Olympia Technologies. Welcome to the Kula Ring, Scott.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Yeah.
God, it's awesome to have you on the show. Look, first off, why don't you tell us what Sierra Olympia Technologies is/does, and then we'll get into you.
Yeah. So Sierra Olympia builds thermal camera components. Some of the bigger companies in our area are Teledyne FLIR, or I guess FLIR is how they're known now, but we build thermal cameras that go into manufacturing. They detect oil and gas leaks. They are often attached to drones and flying around movie sets. All sorts of solutions that our cameras provide for a number of industries. Yeah.
That's incredibly diverse. Oil and gas monitoring through to movie sets. This is the marketing challenge is already becoming quite obvious. Scott, how long have you been with Sierra Olympia?
I've been with them a little over 2 years, going on 2.5 years soon. Before them, my career started in the ski industry. I was on marketing teams for a ski mountain in the heart of Colorado. And then I was in Los Angeles freelancing for a number of agencies, kind of in-house and remote. And then I worked at UCLA as a senior front-end developer, building UCLA.edu and their admissions website, and working on their chancellor's website, and a lot of their big name websites. Then I found myself doing work at Sierra Olympia.
It's always interesting, the path from kind of, well, I guess it's not always interesting because there aren't that many people who've done it to kind of move from a pure web development type role to a more marketing and strategist kind of role. How do you think that's impacted your perspective?
Greatly. And to be truly honest, I started in design. I went to school for graphic design, and my first job was with a window manufacturer in Chicago, designing all their pamphlets and print ads. So I started in design and then kind of slowly made that transition into developer, and now have, transitioned into marketing director. I think the combination of design and development really influenced my ability in technology and my communication with technology. Being able to communicate with a designer from a developer's perspective and vice versa, knowing how to bridge that gap. Also, as a developer, I've gotten the chance to work with a lot of marketers. And so that's kind of branched me into the analytics side, knowing how to track the links that I build, knowing the tools that they use. Been diving into a lot more of that end in the past 2 years than I have been development and design. So it's all three of those aspects combined that have really kind of hopefully given me that edge when doing my marketing work.
I like to be a little contrary on occasion, Scott. So I'm curious. Do you ever feel like do you ever encounter a situation where you're like, man, that design or dev background gave me some blinders here. I didn't see this one coming. I'm always curious about people. Our backgrounds give us a lot of advantages, obviously, as we encounter situations. But I'm always kind of curious of the dark side of it sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I think over my career I've been very technology heavy overall. And I think that's kind of blinded me a little bit to other aspects like sales. In the past 2 years, I've had to jump a lot of personal hurdles in working with the sales team where I'm like, oh, if I could only get these team members to use this tech. But it doesn't always work like that. You need to be very flexible with them. If they don't want to use the tech, you can't force them. Their team has, their own way of doing things that are successful for them. So it's not always easy to, just because you see the benefit of it, doesn't mean that it is actually beneficial for the team and the way the team works.
Man, I wish it was possible to hire, and I say this as a designer who is now primarily a sales guy. I wish it was possible to hire more designers who had more experience with working with sales or maybe even doing sales, because I think it really does give you a very different business perspective than designers are typically taught. And we're sort of taught to think that what we're doing is dramatically improving, at some extent of it, dramatically improving humanity. And and sometimes I think that does make it difficult to truly understand business realities. So you've probably had some really, really fantastic experience on that front, I would think.
Yeah, overall, the main goal that I think you learn is it's a huge team effort. It's no one person. It's a good website makes the sales team look good, but a good sales team member drives people to the website. So it's a huge team effort. It's no one person. Even in the small companies, it might be a one person marketing team, it might be a one person sales team, but together, you're a team and you're all looking for that same outcome.
So I want to kind of peel back the layers of your strategy here a little bit because it seems to me that Sierra Olympia is what I mean, something like 40 people or so. It's a reasonably small company, and you're going up against some heavy hitters. Um, what do you think in the last couple of years has been some of the keys to success there? What do you think what are the things that you've done to level that David Goliath playing field?
There's definitely some things in our products. Being a small company, we were probably one of the first in the thermal industry to offer IR cameras as components. When you go and shop at some of the bigger companies, they're offering fully encased cameras. Some of them are, weather rated, ready to plug directly into your computer or, whatever output you have for visual screen. Our cameras are some of the first that are like, oh, you're coming to us with a drone. We'll outfit this camera component to fit on your drone so you can go off and carry on with your custom projects. So that's been one way that we compete, where we've actually seen now some of the larger companies also offer that service. Another way is we don't compete with them. We piggyback off them. My company in particular, since we build custom components, we have no problem buying cameras from our competitors that are close to what our customer wants and then adding value to them, outfitting them again for a custom project that you need. So we don't reinvent the wheel sometimes. Sometimes if the wheel's there, we just modify it slightly, give it better treads, things of that nature.
I think that's really, really interesting. One of the things you kind of alluded to is this idea of kind of working along, not alongside the competitors, but kind of leveraging some of the things they're talking about in order to promote Sierra Olympia. How are you kind of doing that?
Yeah, so our website is huge with that. The content that we create, our social media channels, uh, the biggest difference between online and a trade show is we can appear right next to our large competitors online. That's a lot easier for us to do than buying a really expensive booth that we have to build out at a trade show. The last trade show I attended, it was 3 stories. It was in Washington D.C. It was a defense show. Um, I'm going to use kind of a bad pun here, but the big guns were literally on the top floor. The helicopters, the tanks, the Humvees, all the armored vehicles. Uh, in those cases, these are multi-million, billion government contracts you're trying to compete with. Like, we can't really do that. To build a trade show outlet or a trade show booth on that floor would cost us obscene amounts of money. We're on the third floor in the bottom towards the back with a 10 by 10 booth. Just so standing out at a trade show is really hard. So one thing that we do is, we try to appear next to them on Google. One thing we've gotten really good at is creating really good content that ranks really high in SEO and appears next to the blogs that are searched with our against the Fortune 500, 100 companies. It's a lot easier to appear next to them online than it is in person. So that's been a big advantage to us. The internet is the great equalizer, as I like to call it.
And this strategy of appearing next to them online makes total sense to me. When you talk about a blog content specifically, are you just looking to see what they are already ranking really well for, and then just trying to basically add a different lens of value and hook to it in some way, or are you trying to beat it at its own game?
It's a balance. So we'll look at our own keywords and look at what we're already successful in, and we'll gear our content towards those keywords. Some of the companies that we compete against, they do a lot more than build thermal cameras. They build, thermal cameras that are integrated into drones already. We don't build drones. We're not trying to compete in the drone space. So I'll go, and having a little bit of technology background, I'll look up sitemaps, XML sitemaps, and I'll see, a quick short list of what they've written their blogs in, and I'll say, hey, we can write, something adapted to us on that topic, so that when someone searches it, boom, we appear right next to them. That's kind of the goal. That's some low-hanging fruit that we do. Capitalize on our own strong keywords and look at what our competitors are writing about.
It kind of surprises me a little bit in a category like infrared cameras, that we're talking about written blog content in a lot of ways. How varied is your content? Do you still find a strong reliance on written, or is there more video these days? I'm always curious about what people are doing versus what they're finding is working, because those aren't always the same thing.
Yeah, we do both. Even though I'm a small team, I do have a wonderful team member who's our visual guy. He does all of our photos, edits all of our videos, and shoots all of our videos. So a lot of times we'll write a blog and have a video to pair with it. Sometimes, if it's just social media, we have a cool 15-second, thermal image shot that we got that we're sharing on social media. He takes care of posting that. So it's a lot of both. One of the channels that we use is YouTube. YouTube is a big attractor of new leads for us. We've had more growth on YouTube in the past 6 months than any other point in our YouTube history. That being said, Google search results are our top. Nothing's going to even come close to comparing to our Google search results. But YouTube is another channel, another route, something to add to, our customer funnel.
When you're talking about creating content that competes with huge competitors, the other problem that you have as a small kind of component manufacturer is that you want to talk about all of the things that often are also components of the total solution and maybe something that's available to consumers. So you're targeting defense and other manufacturers that want to integrate your units into it, but you're probably also getting a lot of junk traffic from people who just want to buy a version of this camera on Amazon or something like that. So how do you focus on the things that really matter and filter out that? I mean, you'll never be able to completely eliminate it, but how do you filter out that sort of junk traffic?
This is where my development background comes in. I was, well, still am, a big WordPress advocate. I used to run when I was in Los Angeles. I was running a WordPress meetup, and I learned a lot just by attending WordPress meetups. So I'm gonna kind of give that community a little bit of a push here and say if there's a WordPress meetup near you, that's a huge resource for me, or has been in my career. Um, but attending to those, I learned more about how to filter what's coming in on your contact folder. Uh, a Kismet, a WordPress plugin. It's very cheap. It's not an expensive subscription, but it blocks tons of spam. We still get people who are coming through, filling out contact forms manually, submitting their sales pitch to us. We're not going to be able to stop that. Those are people who are just doing their jobs, to be honest, trying to make a dollar like we are. Um, and and we get some of that, but there's tools out there, there's spam stoppers out there that we do use and deploy, and they do keep a lot of that out of our hair.
And for clarity, Jeff, are you thinking more about spam, or are you thinking just about kind of buying intent and trying to narrow in on component level buying intent versus consumer intent?
Yeah, a little more the latter, so I certainly understand what you're saying, and Akismet has blocked many a spam message for us and our clients as well. It is a great plugin. But I do sort of wonder about, the consumers who are looking for not what you're selling, but that your competitors might. And not necessarily looking for those specific high-tech components to integrate with other things.
And I don't want to put words in Scott's mouth, but what I will say is when I look at the Sierra Olympia site and I look at some of the content there, it does seem that there's a bit of a scientific or technical skew that may drive some of that weeding out. I don't know how intentional that is.
The content on our website, it's geared towards getting an engineer's attention. So, we're a B2B company. There are other companies that will sell you a thermal camera that connects to your cell phone. We're not really one of them. Uh, the people who are using our cameras are doing science. A lot of them are doing scientific studies, pretty professional environments. They're not really hunting scopes. They're not really meant for you to, do your. Well, I mean, you could if you want to spend extreme amounts of money inspecting your car engine, but I would suggest other cheaper cameras for the daily home use if that's what you need a camera for. That being said, I think a lot of people come to our website. We don't list our prices. Um, I think that would deters a lot of people from even asking. And we do get questions that we can tell people probably don't have the experience to plug in the camera and work with our camera. And they're pretty beginner questions when it comes to IR. Hey, can your camera see through windows? IR cameras, if you've studied them for more than a few hours, you learn that they can't see through windows. So there's telltale signs of the leads that we're looking for and how that works.
I was told this would be more like an X-ray camera, like I was promised in the back of the Superman comics when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. We don't get much of that, but we do. A lot of Bigfoot hunters. That's probably the most of what we get.
For real?
Yeah, well, we're also located in the Pacific Northwest, so kind of Sasquatch country up here.
That's fantastic.
I mean, I think you need to have some video showing infrared images of a supposed Sasquatch. This would be a huge driver. I can't, like, this is just this is a license to print money at this point.
That's always been an idea for a blog to take viral.
I like how you just excuse it away too. It's like, well, but we're in the Pacific Northwest, so Sasquatches are a thing here. Like it makes total sense. Oh my goodness. Okay, back to the eye on the prize here, Jeff. we've got a show to run here. We just can't kind of get sidetracked on Sasquatches. If we get sidetracked on every Sasquatch that came by, I mean,
It happens too easily. Well, we can like easily transition that into the next question, because Sasquatches, of course, are reported in the media. Your competitors have, at their scale, they're a much different access to the media than a startup might. And you mentioned in a bit of our earlier conversation that, you know, you're not able to just call up a Wall Street Journal reporter and feed him a byline. It's a little bit more effort than that. So how does that impact how you're going to market? Kind of that access to the media to talk about the product and the space.
That's like I said, that's where the internet comes back in, the great equalizer. We don't have the money to send lobbyists to Washington. One of our competitors, their government contracts are somewhere around 30% of their revenue. So they're in there working directly with the government, sometimes setting, regulations themselves, like for our oil and gas detection camera, for the leak detection camera. We follow the regulations that they've worked on with these companies sometimes. And that's not to discredit these companies, like they're just in there working with them, and they're the ones providing the labs and the science, and that's the access that they get through their contracts and all. We don't necessarily have that. So the federal government isn't coming directly to us for these cameras, which is kind of a bummer. We'd be more than happy to sell them cameras.
When you don't have that kind of direct access to lobbyists who are helping set the regulations and to the media to report on that and get that the coverage that you can get as a large organization is significant, and that often leads to additional interest in sales that you just can't buy necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll be honest, the first year that I started here, the company that I'm at did spend money on a commercial that ran nationally, and we didn't see much benefit from it. It kind of wasn't worth our purchase at the time, because we weren't able to pair it with more media buys. Um, Someone that we compete against, I've seen them, one of their marketing directors, like hosted on the Today Show. And then they have, a 15-second clip on the news that night on the same channel. We don't have access to that thing, to things like that. We can send out something on the EIM press wire, which will go out to a couple hundred local news websites, but that doesn't seem to be as effective. And the question that I have, that I would love to know is if the bigger companies actually see return on that. How do they track that? How do they know that that's something that's monetizable for them? Um, you know, Even at the larger institutions that I worked at, like UCLA, I was a web developer there, but they're on the news all the time, and I never really got insight into how that was tracked or returned to the school.
yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes for when you're working with one of the smaller competitors in a space, the assumption is that everybody that's bigger has more sophisticated marketing attribution and is measuring the impact of a variety of things in a more intensive way. I've actually found very often the opposite is true. There's the people that are trying to do more with less money that actually have their attribution sorted. They tend to be a little bit more digital in nature, which lends itself more to measurement. And the larger competitors, sometimes with that comes a larger tolerance of lack of measurement in certain instances, right? And a greater inclination towards, well, we've just always done it. Like we've always sent out a press release, so therefore we continue to always do it. I know this isn't your podcast, and I wasn't supposed to answer the question, but I figured like turnabout with fair play there, Scott. I'm kind of curious as we kind of approach the end of our time together. Look, this may go nowhere, but I'm assuming like 2 years in, 2+ years in a company that's small and nimble like this, and hungry, trying to grab market share, there's got to be something along the way where you had to work kind of hard to convince people to do it. Like, it can't have all been like, oh yeah, no, Scott said so. So I'm wondering, does anything jump out as, look, man, it took a lot of convincing, but that was a real home run? Like, where the juice was really worth the squeeze on that convincing.
Absolutely. It was the investment in the website. Uh, when I was hired, they expected a new website in the first 3 months. And it took time to be like, hey, it's going to take a little bit longer than 3 months. Like, we have some brand work to do. There's some style guidelines that we need to meet to ensure that this website looks good. And then, we need to really make sure that the sales pages we're making are sales pages that are needed, that pages that people are looking for. So we had to balance out what our market solutions were, write that content, and have a design all before we even started to build a website. And then when we built the website build went fast. Compared to some website builds I've been a part of, it was efficient and on the cheaper side. And it's a highly effective website that's been, growing in leads for the past year. Well, it's been launched a little over a year now, but it's been growing in leads every month. It's been a great, huge, effective tool that, took some patience, but has now been very much worth it.
That was really the sell job then, wasn't it? Is encouraging of the patients, like something that worth having isn't going to be built in 6 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. There's that Venn diagram of, do it fast, do it cheap, do it well.
I always find the first time I ever saw that was on the wall of the first print shop I ever used. I
Yeah.
was struck by its absolute honesty. It's just perfect. But one of the most, I'll say, over the years of working with B2B manufacturers, one of the most common things that we've seen, especially with new marketers coming on stream within those teams, is that they're often tasked with the website. It's usually it's not uncommon for it to be the first kind of thing that needs to be worked on, whether that was known when that person was hired, or that marketer came in and went, oh, guys, we got to rebuild this website, this is terrible. Do you have any advice for people that don't have someone like you on staff to kind of lead the development and design of that? Someone without the technical chops. What would you say to somebody who is looking to hire somebody to do that work for them?
Yeah, I would say, you don't need a perfect website to rank well on Google. There's a tool called Lighthouse Scores, and it divides your website into 4 different categories. I believe it's performance, SEO, accessibility, and best practices. And so if you can find a developer that knows how to, get green, high-ranking scores and all of those, I would say that's a good start to being in good hands. And there's always tools that you can measure the performance of your website. There's Google Analytics, there's Google Search Console. Learn how to read the numbers in those tools, and you can judge how well your website is performing. Other than that, I spent a lot of my time Googling. There's a lot of words in the web industry that if you just start learning the definitions of, and you can start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And there's no one clear, direct way online, but there's a lot of ways to do it.
John, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. It's been fun to kind of explore what Sierra Olympia is doing, and kind of look at this kind of David versus Goliath story a little bit. And I'm excited to see where you go with it. I think the next 2 years will be even cooler for Sierra Olympia. Thanks so much for sharing the experience with us.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, great to chat.
Thanks for listening to The Kula Ring with Carmen Perry and Jeff White. Don't miss a single manufacturing marketing insight. Subscribe now at kulapartners.com/The Kula Ring. That's KULApartners.com/the Kula Ring.